Welcome to the GMS webinar. When we first did our webinar, we had a little bit of difficulty with our recording the audio, so we wanted to make another recording with the audio so that people who missed the first webinar would have the opportunity to join and see what we talked about. So this one will be slightly shorter, but we'll give people who missed the first one the opportunity to see what they missed. Just as a little background on Aquaveo, Aquaveo's been creating modeling software since 1991. We have various products that we offer, mostly that deal with water resources modeling. We also provide consulting services. We have expert staff that can help with your computer modeling needs. We can also give project-specific modeling assistance. We're also willing to work as subcontractors to provide support for your projects or provide additional resources if you have a larger project that would merit that. Another feature that we offer with our company is personalized custom training. This is very convenient because it removes travel costs, removes the time that it takes to be gone from the office as well. We can work with your data and do this via WebEx and give you some expert modeling help without you even having to leave your office. So contact us if you're interested in that. We also offer on-site training if you feel like that would be better suited to your needs. We also do custom software development. So if you're working on a specific project where you have a repetitive process that you think could be automated and save you a great deal of time, we're open to those kind of opportunities. And we make that available for GMS and also for ArcGIS, which can be a really nice feature for specific tasks or projects that you're working on. So that's kind of a little bit of background on things that we touched on about our company. Now we'll dive into the GMS webinar topics, and so we'll first cover just some general features and improvements to graphics in version 8 and 8.1 of GMS. Then we'll touch on some updates to modeling features, and then we'll end by showing the 64-bit version of GMS 8.1. So a few things that aren't directly related to features in the software, but that we have been working on and we wanted to make sure that our users were aware of, was first the GMS Learning Center. And if you go to aquaveo.com, GMS Learning, there's a link from the GMS page that gets you here. On this page we have links to demo videos that show different features in GMS. And then we also have listed here all of our tutorials that give you step-by-step instructions for how to use GMS for specific modeling tasks. So I just encourage you to look at that. The other item that we want to talk about was we now have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/aquaveo. And on this website, we post our demo videos here, and so we have a couple of playlists here. You can go in and see. We have currently 19 videos, and we're always, every month we try to post at least 1 or 2 more videos that demonstrate features in GMS. And we try to keep these fairly short so that you can just see the features that exist. And usually they come from tutorial data, so that if it goes too fast or you're not able to keep up with the video, don't be too concerned. We also have the step-by-step tutorials. Now with the new version of GMS 8.0, we introduced what's called GMS Community Edition, and this is a free version of GMS that allows you to read in ModFlow models, edit them, and save them out. And it's free. You download GMS, you just simply request a Community Edition license. It'll automatically be emailed to you, and then you can start using that version. Okay, so now we're going to start doing some demos and showing some specific features in GMS. So we'll start first with the import from web feature. And I'm going to start up GMS 8.0. And so the idea behind the import from web feature is you can use this feature to import background GIS data or aerial imagery or elevation data by connecting to a web service and downloading that. So to access it, you just go to the File menu and do Import from Web. And it's telling me that it's putting me into a global projected coordinate system. And then a map locator tool comes up that shows us where it is that we're locating ourselves. So just to give you an idea here, this actually uses Bing. And you know, I can zoom around to any part here in this map and download the data. So let's say I had a project that was in the South Salt Lake area, and this project actually has to do with a mine. And so inside this map, I can turn on the aerial imagery so I can see what it is, where I'm looking at. And so let's say I have a project that's concerning this, there's a copper mine right here, and this is the area that I want to study. The other thing you can do with this, if you turn on the locator tool, and I said I wanted to do a project, let's say in San Antonio, Texas, tell it to find it, it'll immediately jump there, and then I could zoom in on the area that I was interested in. But we're up here in Utah. So we'll go back to our area here of interest. So let's say this was my area of interest. Now I'm using this map locator to get some geographic coordinates that I'll then use with the web services to query data. So I would select OK here. And then a dialog comes up and it lets me pick different types of data that I can download from these web services. And so I could do elevation data, I could download imagery that it shows here, and instead of actually doing that download, I'm going to hit cancel. And I'm going to load up a file here where I've already downloaded that data. So we'll go ahead and load this file up. Okay, and so what we can see here is I've downloaded elevation data. So here's the elevations at this site. To turn that off, I've also downloaded an aerial image, an aerial photograph of this site. And now I can use these things to begin working with my data. So in this case, I actually converted the elevations into a surface that I could visualize and contour. And you know, just with a few clicks, I was able to quickly bring this data in. I can interact with it now, look at it, work with it. You know, I could even do some fun stuff like I could put the image onto the surface. And now I've got my aerial photograph mapped to this surface, and I can view and start working with my data, building my model. So that's the import from web feature. That can be really handy when you're just starting a project and quickly get you some data. Another new feature that we have in version 8 is the ability to load ArcGIS map server layers. So let's jump back here to this project that I started here with Bingham Canyon. I'm going to go to the GIS module, and I need to enable ArcObjects. So this allows me to use ArcGIS from within GMS. And so now I'm able to just say add data, and it's telling me that the imagery from ArcGIS is going to draw on top of the imagery that I have in my project. So here I'm going to load the world imagery layer. for ArcGIS, and you can see now it's pulled this layer from a website or from a web service. So I'm going to turn that off, and just to illustrate what we did there, when GMS 8 is installed, there's a folder in your My Documents area under GMS 8.0 that has GIS layer files, and in here there's several layer files that connect to these web server layers. And so you can just browse right in there, open up world imagery, and there you go. And so, yeah, the nice thing about this is this map will actually update on the fly. So as I zoom in, I will get better resolution. So I'm going to turn off my background image. So for instance, you know, if I zoom in on this neighborhood, you can see that it keeps updating the image as I move in so that I can keep nice resolution as I move around in my project. That can be really handy. And just as an example, so here, just to show that this works all over the world, here I've got a project where I've got, this is actually the Elbe River, and I will, again, enable Arc, and now I'm going to I'll add the world topo map layer here. So you can see here's the topo map there through Germany. You can also add world imagery. You can go on top of that, see that. And then here I've zoomed in on a city in Germany the Elbe runs through. And if we look at that on the topo map, we can see it's the city of Dresden. So a really nice feature, allows you to work with imagery around the entire globe, and you just drop it into your project and you're ready to go. So that's world imagery. So some of the other things that we've worked on in version 8 of GMS is improving our 3D graphics, and we'll show that now we'll go over showing transparency, some of the new lighting options, show how we've sped up switching between data sets and contouring, the faster frame rate as you pan and rotate, a new feature of block fill contours, and then saving out your images to Google Earth. So I'm going to start up GMS 8 again, and I'm going to load up this project. And what this is going to illustrate is the transparency features that we've added in version 8. So here I have, what I'm displaying here is I have a set of solids that I've created, and then this is actually a 2D grid of the water table that I'm looking at, where I've taken the data from my ModFlow solution and I've mapped it over onto a 2D grid, and now I can actually see that inside my solids. And so the transparency is handled using materials. So here I've gone in and specified on the materials that are assigned to my solids that a level of transparency. So for instance, if I wanted to make the lower aquifer less transparent, so I'd set its transparency level, maybe I make it so it's not transparent at all, and I select OK. And notice now I can't see through that, but I can still see through the other portions. And so you can set that on a per material basis. So here, let's say we wanted to be able to see where this clay material was. And so here we can see now, if I turn off the 2D grid, so this is the extent of this clay layer through this model. And because I've got the transparency turned on, I can see that. There's also a couple of this silty clay here that forms lenses in the model will make it so it's opaque as well. And so now I can see where those layers are and their extents, and that's all available in the newest version of GMS. And you get really nice smooth rotations and zooms even with this much data in your model. Okay, next we're going to show the new lighting options. So again, I'll start up GMS. So here I've just got a simple surface that I'm working with, and I come in and you're able to apply lighting, and notice now that we have this shininess factor that you can apply, and I select OK. And you can see we get some reflections back on us, which can make for some nice imagery. And I'm actually going to bring this up in version 8.1 to show a couple more features. In version 8.1, when you go into the lighting dialog, so there's some new options, but as you change the position of the light, your display will update. And so you can see immediately how the applied light will look. The other option that you have with this is you can actually turn on multiple lights and for different lighting effects. So nice thing here is you can move your light around. If you're trying to generate, a final image for a report, generate a picture, you can move that lighting around, and you won't have to worry about how, you won't have to hit OK on the dialog, go back out, and then go back in. That's the new features of lighting. Next we'll show the faster data set switching. So for here I'm going to actually bring up a project in version 7.0. And this is a fairly large grid. And this 7.0 will be starting here. Okay, and I'm going to start loading a project into 7.0. Okay, so here we've got a fairly large grid. If I look at the properties here, I think it has around 400,000, so just over 400,000 cells in this grid. And I've got a couple of data sets under here. So as I switch between data sets, you notice you get a little progress bar down here that's telling you that it's moving some values around. I switch to another one. Again, you see that. Okay, and we'll bring this up in version 8. So I'm going to bring in this same project into version 8. Okay, so here's that same grid in version 8, and now I'll switch between the data sets, and you notice that it went extremely fast. That progress bar barely even shows up, and your contours and your display is changed almost immediately. Again, if we go back to version 7, I switch between here, you see it's taken a while, and finally my display updates. And in version 8, I'm able to just switch between, and the display updates almost instantly. So hopefully that'll get rid of some frustration. And again, the larger the model grid, the greater the effect of a speed up like that will be. All right, so now we're going to show improvement in frame rate, or having more real-time pan and rotates as you interact with your data. So here I'm loading up a model in version 7.1. And we'll get this loaded, and we'll just show how, as you interact with your model, the increase in speed that we've been able to achieve. So here again, I've got that same model, a little over 400,000 cells. If I go to use the rotate tool, you get a little bit of choppiness here as it moves around, and it's just a little bit choppy. I zoom in and out, and I get a little bit of choppiness. I go to pan, and it kind of chops around. And now we'll load this same project into version 8.1. Okay, so here I've got that same model. I'll use the rotate, and you'll notice that I'm not getting nearly the same choppiness. My zoom in and zoom out is extremely fast. I go to pan, it moves around. I don't get any lag as I'm moving around with my model here. So now, as soon as you get up to a much larger model, like once you get over 1 million cells or so, you will get a little bit of delay, but it certainly is much better than previous versions, and makes it so you're able to interact with your data much faster and much better. All right, and then another new feature that we've added in version 8 was block fill contours. I'm going to bring this up in version 8.1 actually to show an additional feature that we've added. All right, so I'm going to load my model here, and so I've got some head contours. So we introduced the idea of being able to do block fill, so you can see how that shows up. The feature that we've added in version 8 is, so here I've got my head contours, and let's say I also want to be able to contour my hydraulic conductivity, for example, so I can see the comparison that has. So in version 8.1, we've added this section to contour a specified data set. So we still have the section in our dialog where you can do contours, vectors, or isosurfaces for the active data set, but now you can also specify a data set, and I can come in here and actually pick my mod flow hydraulic conductivity, and I'll say I want to contour that, and I'm going to do block fill, and then I will choose to do unique values. So it's gone through that data set and picked out the unique values. If I've assigned my hydraulic conductivity in zones and I want to see how that compares, I can use this option. Select OK, and now I can see my hydraulic conductivity zones and the way they compare with the contours. And and I also have all the other contour options available here. I can do color fill with a continuous range, and increase my number of contours. And in this case, this isn't quite as interesting because we've got these, we've assigned it by zones. But you have all those contouring options available to you with the specified data set. Another nice feature that we have is the ability to save save out a project so that you'll be able to display it in Google Earth. So I'll go ahead and bring up version 8 here. And I'm going to load up a project. So here I've got a project. I've got a plume for a site that I've modeled. And I have put this project into a global projection so that I know where it's located on the Earth. I can now save this out as an image that will show up in Google Earth. So I'm going to turn off my background image, and I want to save out my current display so that I could send a KMZ file, say, to a client, and they would be able to just open it up in Google Earth. So I select the Save As command, and I change my filter to be a KMZ raster file, and I'll just overwrite this file that's sitting here. Select Save. And now it's taken the display, and now I'm just going to double-click on this KMZ file that I saved, and Google Earth is launched. And it's now going to load right to where that layer is. And it's zoomed in right on it, and you can see where the plume showed up. And now, I can interact with Google Earth just like normal. And I can see my data and how it shows up in here. So really handy for a client. They're going to be fairly comfortable, much more comfortable using Google Earth than something else, and a quick way to send them model results and show them what you've got. The other thing that you're able to do with this is you can actually create an animation that will show up in Google Earth. So normally when you save out an animation, it just saves it to an AVI file. There's also an option to just save that to a KMZ file. And I'll go ahead and click next, and it's going to match these, and now it's generating these images. And it's saved out a KMZ file, and now it's launching that in Google Earth. So it's going to, again, zoom in on this area. And you notice now I have this animation toolbar up here, and I'll go ahead and select play. And the first time as it loads the frames, you can sometimes get some of these interesting things showing, but now as it continues to do it, you can see that it plays the animation, and I actually am able, even while it's playing the animation, I can still interact with the interface here. So nice features. You can send either just an image or an animation to someone in a KMZ file and just email it over to them. Okay, so now we want to touch on some of the new modeling features that we have available in the new versions of GMS. So new with version 8.0, we have support for ModFlow 2005, including the UZF package. We have support for the LMG3 solver package, including parallel versions of ModFlow 2000 and ModFlow 2005. A nice convenient feature called Open Containing Folder that I'll show you. We've added different types of regularization to use with PEST. We have included an interface to CWAT, and we've made some enhancements to our regional to local model conversion, including the ability to work with transient models. So we'll show quickly here the ModFlow 2005 interface. So I'll just load this up in version 8. And so now if I go into the ModFlow menu and I go into global options, right here you have an option to select which version of ModFlow you want to use. So 2005 is available. When 2005 is available, the UZF package is also available. And you can see here the UZF package where we have all of the different input options, the various arrays that you can set. You can specify that all right from this dialog and view your different arrays, okay, as well as how they may vary with your stress periods. We also have the ability to create some of those UZF inputs using the conceptual model. So I can specify various UZF input arrays using the conceptual model just like I would recharge or ET, and those will map over to your model grid and you'll be ready to run. Let's see here. So the next item was that we have parallel versions of ModFlow 2000, ModFlow 2005, and I'll just show this here in version 8.1. I'll open up that same project. And so when you go to run ModFlow, you have the option here under the ModFlow settings where you can specify the version of ModFlow that you want to run. So you can specify if you want to run double precision, if you want to run parallel, which means that the SAMG solver has been parallelized, or you can even choose to run a 64-bit version of ModFlow. And that's available for both ModFlow. There are 64-bit versions of ModFlow and ModFlow 2005, as well as parallel and double precision. So all those ship with GMS, and you can use them as needed with your project. Another nice feature in version 8, as you're working with a ModFlow model, sometimes you want to actually look at the model input files themselves. And so we've for some time now inside the Project Explorer, we've had the ability to show your ModFlow model and your different inputs. Now if I right-click on my ModFlow model, I get this option here that says Open Containing Folder. That will open a file browser that will jump right to where the ModFlow inputs are. So here I've got my ModFlow name file that I can open and look at, or any other ModFlow inputs. I've got the out file. So just a fast, convenient way to quickly get to your ModFlow files if you want to look at something specific that is in them. All right, so we've added different types of parameter estimation. I'll show that at the same time I'm showing the example for CWAT. So I'm just going to load up this project here. So first, as far as the parameter estimation options, if this were an inverse run that I was doing inside of parameter estimation, you can pick the type of Tikhonov regularization you'd like to use with your pilot points. So traditionally, we've always done the preferred homogeneous regularization. You now have the option to include or just do preferred value regularization. And according to John Doherty, in certain cases that can be preferable, give you a better solution. This model here that we're showing is actually a CWAT model. So you can see here we've added the CWAT menu. Much of the input to the CWAT model, since CWAT is really a combination of ModFlow and MT3D with 2 more packages added on, much of the input you just specify through the ModFlow and MT3D interfaces. And then in the CWAT interface, you're able to specify data for the variable density flow package as well as the viscosity package. And then you just run it just like you do ModFlow. Your solution gets read in, which consists of outputs that are ModFlow specific as well as MT3D. So here we're looking at our saltwater interface. And here in my graphics window, what I'm showing is I've got transparency turned on my 3D grid. I'm showing some wells here in the map module. And then I've got an isosurface of my saltwater interface here. And we're going to see the effect that these wells have on the saltwater interface. So I'm just going to march through some time steps here, and you'll notice that you see the isosurface changing as we change these time steps. So I'll march through and pay particular attention to this well over here. You'll see that it eventually is covered completely by the saltwater interface. So you can see the saltwater interface reaching out to it. It's covering it, and now the well gets turned off, and the interface starts to recover. And so if we even zoom in here, we can see that even better. So starting out, the well's pretty close to the interface, and as we march along here, we see that that interface grows, eventually envelops the well. So some interesting things you can do, because you can visualize your data in 3D and GMS and actually get a good idea of the extent and the way that you know, something like this moves. And finally, we'll talk here about some regional to local model enhancements. I'll bring this up in version 8. So a couple items that we've added here. First, we've added more options to when you convert your ModFlow data to scatter points. So here I've got my regional model. My local model is going to be just in this area here. So normally I would say ModFlow layers to 2D scatter points, and this dialog comes up. And one of the first things I can do is I can say, well, I only want scatter points to be created inside of a particular coverage that I specify. So if I move this out of the way, I made a polygon here that's bigger than my side area, and I say, well, I only want scatter points to show up right there. That way it doesn't have to make them for the whole grid. And then I can create data sets for layer elevations, flow package, recharge. I can pick starting and ending times for that. I can make data sets for head as well. And so here I've selected my head solution for my regional model. Again, I can select time period. So let's say, yeah, I was only interested in whatever, 1992 forward. I could specify that. And I can also subdivide my regional model grid layers into a greater number of local model layers. So maybe I want 2 layers from the old layer 1 and 3 layers from the old layer 2. And now I have Here's my new scatter point set. It's all just been created in this area here, and I can use that then to interpolate from, I would create a new local model grid, and then we made some enhancements to the interpolate to ModFlow layers. So you can interpolate elevations and starting heads. You can also interpolate flow package data. You can interpolate recharge. And you can also interpolate head values to constant head boundary conditions. So that for a transient model, you can interpolate the actual head values at the different stress periods, and it'll actually perform a transient interpolation of that. And there's some explanation on the wiki, the documentation that shows how that interpolation is done. Okay. And that covers some of the new features available for the modeling. And then we'll end here just by showing a 64-bit version of GMS. So version 8.1, we will have a 64-bit version, and this should be released shortly. And this allows you to load in much larger models and interact with them, because you will be able to take advantage of all the RAM that you have in your computer. And here I'm just loading up a pretty large grid. I believe this one has, maybe 1.5 million grid cells. It'll take a moment to load in. And we're actually going to be viewing this grid in 3D. So this is the grid. If I look at the properties on it here, so this grid is actually 1.6 million cells. And I can actually visualize this in 3D. I get pretty good response times as I interact with it. You can see the improvement in that. Zoom in and see the different areas. And we'll go ahead and just for fun, we'll apply some transparency here and see what it looks like. And, you know, I'm still able to, you know, really pretty quickly interact with this, have good response times, and can work with a large model. And I'll just show one other model that we have here. This actually has 4 million grid cells in it. So just to illustrate that you can load much, much larger versions of your models, or much larger models, I should say, maybe not necessarily versions. So this model isn't quite as interesting to look at because it's made with an older version of ModFlow. But nonetheless, it illustrates the ability to load in these really large models. So it takes a moment here to get it loaded. I come here and look at this grid. See, we're just over 4 million cells large. And I actually could also look at all the layers at once, going through here and generating the display. And so there's all that, and you can see if we zoom in here just how refined these model grid cells are. And then just to reiterate something that I mentioned before, if you go to ModFlow, we also have 64-bit versions of ModFlow 2000 and ModFlow 2005 that you can run, because you know, a model of this size most likely isn't going to run with the 32-bit version of ModFlow. So we hope to have version 8.1 out in August, and we want to thank you for having watched our webinar. And if you have any feedback or questions that you want to ask us, go ahead and send that to webinar@aquaveo.com. Thanks for attending, and we'll hope that your modeling goes well. Thank you.